Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel Mind Chakra. Friends, imagine a beautifully clear blue lake teeming with fish. Now imagine dumping thousands of kilograms of food directly into it. You'd probably think the wildlife would thrive there, right? Wrong. In water ecosystem, an excess of food doesn't create life. It causes a gruesome, suffocating death sentence. This is the signs of how we are accidentally choking our lakes and why the creatures inside them are quietly literally drowning underwater. So let's look at the deadly cycle of eutrophication and hypoxia. So without much ado, let's begin. Friends, to understand the crisis, we first have to understand how unique lakes really are, how unique these really lakes are. Did you know that lakes hold over 50% of all the world's freshwater diversity? Even though they cover less than 3% of the Earth's surface, 3% of the Earth's surface, they are massive biodiversity havens and a direct lifeline for our drinking water, fishing, and agriculture. But here is the fatal flaw. Unlike rivers that constantly flow and flush themselves clean, lakes are closed, stagnant basins. Whatever goes into lakes stays in a lake, and that makes them incredibly vulnerable. So this is how important are the lakes. So they are the biodiversity heaven and how vulnerable these lakes are, and they also support the human lifeline. So let's understand what eutrophication is. So now let's understand what is this eutrophication is. This vulnerability leads to a process called eutrophication. The word comes from a Greek word eutrophos. The word comes from the Greek word eutrophos, which literally translates to well-nourished or abundantly fed. Well-nourished or abundantly fed. But in environmental science, overfeeding is a nightmare. It's the process where a water body gets unnaturally enriched with nutrients, completely transforming it from healthy to toxic. Scientists classify these stages. A healthy, crystal clear lake with a high oxygen is called as oligotrophic. You can see it here, oligotrophic. A degraded, cloudy, suffocating lake is called as eutrophic. I repeat, a degraded, cloudy, suffocating lake is called as eutrophic. Let's break down exactly how a lake takes this deadly turn step by step. So let's understand, friends, how this eutrophication happens in a stepwise manner. Step 1, the nutrient overload. Friends, the nutrient overload, the primary culprits behind this crisis are two specific chemical elements. Those are nitrogen and phosphorus. Nitrogen and phosphorus. These are the main ingredients found in modern agriculture, agricultural fertilizers, domestic sewage, and animal manure. When heavy seasonal rains hit the land, they act as a catalyst, washing millions of tons of these loose chemicals straight off the farms and urban streets into our lakes. Suddenly, the lake receives a massive overload of nourishment. It acts like a high octane rocket fuel for aquatic weeds. Friends, you can see here this is the agriculture feed. Because of the heavy rain which comes, this rain acts as a catalyst and takes away the agriculture fertilizers which contains nitrogen and phosphorus straight to the lakes. And same thing happens in urban areas too. Urban sewage also contains these chemical elements, and because of the rain and floods, this materials or this phosphorus and nitrogen goes to our lakes. So now let's understand steps 2. Step 2, the algal bloom. The step 2, the algal bloom. Microscopic green algae and cyanobacteria living in the water hit the jackpot. They consume this chemical feast and begin to multiply at an exponential, uncontrollable rate. Within a days, a thick, slimy, pea green blanket completely coats the entire surface of the lake. You can see here algal bloom has happened and it is completely covering the surface of the lake. This is an algal bloom and it acts exactly like a closed window blind. It suffocates the surface and completely blocks vital ambient sunlight from penetrating down into the deeper layers of the lake. As you can see here, lake is covered by the algal bloom. The surface is totally covered. So the sunlight which is coming, it stopped here only. It is blocked by the algal bloom. So the deeper layers of the lake are starved by the sunlight. So moving on to the next step, the underwater collapse. The underwater collapse. Once the sunlight is cut off, a dark chain reaction begins underneath. Deep water plants can no longer perform photosynthesis. Without light, they wither and die off rapidly, destroying primary habitats and shelters of the lake's marine life. But the crisis doubles down. Algae have an incredibly short life cycle. Soon, the billions of tons of surface algae die off as well. They sink heavily to the bottom of the lake basin, forming a thick, rotting layer of organic sludge. Friends, as you can see here, once the surface is cut off from the surface, algal bloom happens at the surface and the sunlight going to the deeper down layers of the lake is cut off, and then this collapse happens in the beneath layers underneath. So next, understand oxygen demand spike. Step 4, oxygen demand spike. This is the crucial twist that tricks most students actually. The algae themselves don't directly kill the fish. It's the cleanup crew. Billions of aerobic decomposing bacteria arrive at the bottom of the lake to feast on the massive pile of dead sunken algae. As I said earlier previously in the previous slide, algae have a short span, they die and go and settle in the down layers of the lake. To feast on this dead algae, this bacteria comes up. So to digest all this rotting organic matter, these bacteria have to breathe, right? So these bacteria have to breathe just like we do. They perform aerobic respiration and multiply widely and rapidly, consuming lakes dissolved oxygen at an astronomical rate. This causes the biological oxygen demand. So this you should understand what is this biological demand. Once the algae settles down, right, algae settles down, this dead algae whatever is there, to consume that, the bacterial action once it start, so it start breathing. So there is a demand for the oxygen, it consumes the dissolved oxygen which is there in the lake water. This is called the biological oxygen demand, or we can say BOD. So this causes the biological oxygen demand to skyrocket, vacuuming the essential oxygen straight out of the water column. So now you understand what in this you understood what is the concept of biological oxygen demand. Your students might get confused what is the biological demand. Now you understood, right? I hope you got it. So because of this, whatever the dissolved oxygen is there, whatever oxygen is there in the lake, it starts depleting. So moving on to the next step, hypoxia or dead zone. Hypoxia or dead zone. Excuse me. So in this step, the rapid depletion of oxygen plunges the lake into a state of severe hypoxia, which meaning dissolved oxygen drops below the absolute minimum needed to sustain a basic life in the lake. Right? Basic life, to sustain a basic life, whatever amount of oxygen is required in the lake, it starts depleting. Slow moving bottom dwellers, crabs and fish suddenly realize they can't breathe. The result is catastrophic. Mass suffocation events known as the fish kill happens. The lake effectively transforms into a sterile aquatic desert, a complete dead zone where nothing can survive except toxic and anaerobic bacteria. Here you can see dead fish, they died because of inavailability of oxygen. Since lake has been depleted by the oxygen because of the bacterial activity which is going on beneath the layers of the lake. So it converts the lake into aquatic desert. The lake is lake was a thriving biodiversity spot, right? And it is turned into a aquatic desert. I hope you understood, friends. So moving on to next. So this hypoxia and eutrophication happens, right? So how we have to protect this ecosystem called as our lakes, how we have to protect them. But this destructive cycle is completely preventable if we take proper actions and the preventive measures. First, we must practice smart farming. Friends, remember this, we have to practice smart farming using precision agriculture to stop nutrient overloading right at the sources. And the second is we can plant buffer zones of dense trees and vegetation along the lake borders to naturally trap and filter out chemical runoff before it ever touches the water. We have to create the buffer zones. And the third is upgrading our municipal water treatment facilities. Upgrading our water treatment facilities in our cities. That's a municipal water treatment facilities. This allows us to screen out excess nitrogen and phosphorus from sewage. And finally, by actively supporting international frameworks like the Ramsar Convention, we can protect and rehabilitate our global wetlands to permanently restore nature's delicate balance. Friends, so this is how we can protect our lakes. One is the smart farming, then creating the buffer zones and treating the water in the sewage, especially in the cities and especially that too in the metropolitan cities. And then the international cooperation among the countries to protect this very important ecosystem which we call as a lakes. Friends, I have explained about the Ramsar Convention in one of my previous video. You will get the description link of you will get link of that Ramsar Convention in the description of this video. Please go and watch that video if you haven't seen it. So friends, our lakes are precious, close lifelines that we cannot afford to lose. If you found this breakdown helpful for your studies or exam preparation, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below on what environmental topic we should unpack next. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.